I'm Kim Bremer, your host today for another edition of Bovinews, coming to you from my mobile office, keeping you up to date on the cattle industry's latest in technology, management, genetics, and more. For today's dairy producers, it's not enough to just produce a high-quality product. Consumers and the retail companies and supply chains that serve them demand more. Those stakeholders value an understanding of how milk is produced and have an expectation that it's produced with care for animals, employees who work with them, and preservation of the environment. Today, we'll hear from experts in sustainability, including 3 dairy producers who will share their success implementing sustainable practices on their dairy. Each of the producers are recipients of the 2021 U.S. Dairy Sustainability Award made possible by the Dairy Checkoff through the Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy. Our first presenter, who will provide an overview of how the dairy industry is supporting and advancing sustainable practices, is Karen Scanlon. Karen leads all environmental programs and partnerships for Dairy Management, Inc. and the Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy as Senior Vice President, Sustainability Initiatives. In that role, she heads a cross-organizational leadership team and is responsible for the integration of work plans, staffs, and budgets. She also manages the Innovation Center's Environmental Stewardship Committee and maintains oversight of partner and stakeholder outreach and communications related to environmental programs. Karen brings extensive leadership experience in agriculture conservation initiatives, partnership cultivation, and strategy development and execution after serving as executive director of the Conservation Technology Information Center, CTIC, for 11 years. In this role, she worked with strategic partners in the public and private sectors to build innovation and effective programs to achieve sustainability goals and success in a variety of conservation efforts across the United States. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you so much, Kim. I'm delighted to be here. And I'll just jump in and a little background that 14 years ago, dairy farmers saw the signals of change in the marketplace, that people wanted to know more about their food and how it's made and where it's from. And so through the checkoff, dairy farmers brought CEOs from cooperatives, processors, and retailers, trade associations, and brought them together to form the Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy. And for a common purpose, and that's to foster collaboration pre-competitively, to proactively address important issues and opportunities that impact the entire industry, but that no one company or sector can address alone. And then finally, to leverage collective assets and know-how of the diverse U.S. dairy community. And we really are a diverse industry of both large and small farms, companies, and retailers, but an interdependent chain with a shared set of values that includes responsible production, nourishing communities, and continuous improvement. And it's important that we collectively share that story and share it proudly. Over the past decade, farmers' vision for the Innovation Center has developed into an important leadership forum, and that includes several things that I'd like to tell you about. First, the Dairy Sustainability Alliance. And this is a fantastic group of more than 150 different stakeholders, and that includes farmers, dairy companies, industry experts, academics, government employees, NGOs, and others who want to contribute to dairy's social responsibility journey. And members of the Dairy Sustainability Alliance, they get together, share knowledge, collaborate on issues that affect the entire industry, and really work on accelerating progress toward common goals and contribute to the long-term viability of the U.S. dairy industry. Second, I wanted to point out that through the Innovation Center, we've commissioned science-based research that sets the record straight on the industry's environmental footprint. And through that science, we've demonstrated that dairy is only 2% of all greenhouse gas emissions in the U.S. And then thirdly, there's many programs and initiatives that have used the research as a foundation for a creation of best practices and tools for farmers, for processors, and others throughout dairy value chain. And it's really supporting that meaningful change on our journey of sustainability and social responsibility. Independent studies have shown that all of these efforts have made an impact. In fact, producing a gallon of milk in 2017 required 30% less water, 21% less land, and a 19% smaller carbon footprint than it did in 2007. And if you fast forward today, People tell us that they want to eat food that is good for themselves and good for the planet. They continue to have questions and concerns about how animals and employees are treated in food production, and increasingly they want to understand the environmental footprint of the food they eat. We know that dairy plays an irreplaceable role in sustainable food systems. Very few industries can positively impact the world in the way that dairy can. Dairy is nutritious and affordable choice that fuels overall wellness. And dairy contributes to strong, thriving communities. And we believe dairy can be an environmental solution. The good news is dairy farmers have been caring for the environment long before the term sustainable hit the mainstream. Though there's still work that needs to be done, farmers haven't always talked about the progress that they have made. So that's where the Dairy Sustainability Awards come in. They were developed by the Innovation Center to bring these important facts to life with real examples in 4 categories: outstanding dairy farm sustainability, outstanding community impact, outstanding supply chain collaboration, and outstanding dairy processing and manufacturing sustainability. The awards, which are sponsored by companies like Zoetis, Syngenta, Fibro, and De La Val, and others, have given the Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy a chance to spotlight those farmers and dairy companies across the country who have implemented practices and technologies in economically viable ways and that demonstrate proven results. These award winners are true leaders, and each winner has built a case study that provides replicable results that can inspire and inform positive change for others. And we've seen some of those practices and technologies take off with a really catalytic effect. The awards are judged by an independent panel of dairy and conservation experts who consider innovation, scalability, replicability when evaluating the nominations. And among the criteria to apply for the awards is participation and good standing in the National Dairy Farmers Assuring Responsible Management Animal Care Program, an agreement to participate in the Farm Environmental Stewardship Module for determining a farm's greenhouse gas and energy footprint. And this year, in 2021, we're celebrating 10 years, the 10-year anniversary of the awards program. And including this year's winners, we've honored more than 80 farms, businesses, and community partnerships that have demonstrated social, environmental, and economic excellence. This year's winners really put U.S. Dairy's great diversity on full display, with farms and businesses of all sizes from coast to coast, showing how dairy is uniquely qualified to make significant contributions to some of today's most pressing issues, such as hunger, health and well-being, and economic growth, as well as being an environmental solution. So I'm very excited that 3 of our 2021 winners are here today to tell their stories.
Thank you, Karen. Dave Graybill operates Red Sunset Farm, a dairy farm in Mifflintown, Pennsylvania, milking 60 head of registered Holsteins and raising 70+ head of replacement heifers. The cattle are rotationally grazed on 60 acres of paddocks. The farm, which is rented from landowners who reside in the Washington, D.C. area, covers about 400 acres of corn, soybeans, hay, and small grains. In 2020, Dave was one of 33 people nationally appointed to serve on the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Farm, Ranch, and Rural Communities Federal Advisory Committee. In addition to serving on the State Board of Directors, Dave chairs the State Dairy and Farm Issues Committee and previously chaired the State Natural and Environmental Resources Committee. Welcome, Dave.
Hi, Kim. So how have consumers or the supply chain influenced what we do here on Red Sunset Farms and the sustainability practices we have? As I look at the things that are around me, I want clean water, I want clean air, and I want a farm that is economical in the way I run it. I want to be able to take great care of the cows, and in taking care of them, today it's 90 degrees out there, and we are keeping them cool with sprinklers and mist and fans. They are being taken care of. They are taking care of us. Our farm sits in the Chesapeake Bay, and as you already stated, I am a individual that's active in the Pennsylvania Farm Bureau. And about 6 years ago, I was appointed to the Natural and Environmental Committee. and we looked at environmental things all across the state of Pennsylvania on that committee. I had a group of 6 to 8 people that were working with me, and it amazed me because I only see a portion of Pennsylvania. I grew up in Juniata County. I'm just seeing my little farm, and as I talk with individuals all across the state of Pennsylvania, I learned that there was a lot of different environmental problems, and so that gave me the inspiration to continue to look at things on my farm that directly influence the Chesapeake Bay, and I could see that we could make a difference by reducing the amount of nutrients we had running off from the farm, and it was a great economic advantage to us. As being in a leadership role in the Juniata County, and being president at that point in time, back in 2012, I was president of our Juniata County Farm Bureau. And so you were seen in the community as a leader. And when you're seen in the community as a leader, you want to be able to show people good things that are going on the farm. I like a pretty farm. We rent this farm from landlords out of Washington, D.C. And my goal is to have this farm looking better than whenever I received it back in the year 2000. And it does. We've been able to implement things. We've been able to implement cover crops. We've been able to implement strip farming. We are grazing. All those things make this farm look pretty. How can other producers replicate what we've done? And I think the biggest thing is to have good advisors around you. Go to your conservation district and chat with them about what it takes to improve your farm. They have a lot of good plans. I've worked very closely with the conservation district. I've worked with the extension office. We had problems that we had to solve whenever it came to electricity use on the farm, and we used extension agents to help us with that. Extension experts. Got an extension engineer in here and figured out how to improve the quality of our milk just by cooling it faster and more efficiently. Those advisors that you can find that are tried and proven folks. I use a crop advisor that really has improved the way we do cropping here, because I can't know everything there is about crops. I can't know everything there is about cows. I need those folks around me, whether it's the crop advisor walking the farm every couple of weeks in season to see what the rate of growth is, what the weed pressure are, if there's insect pressure that we have to take care of. Those are things that I can rely on that expert to tell me things about the farm and help us improve the farm and keep it sustainable. The veterinarian has to be a big part of what we do, because whenever you're taking care of animals, you need that veterinarian care, and to have somebody at a moment's notice to be able to call them up and say, hey, I'm seeing this, what do you suggest? Or to have that veterinarian looking over your records, because he's also a nutritionist. He looks over my records and he can tell me if there's something going wrong with the cattle. It's all about having those extra eyes that are experts in their field, and they're just helping us to be more sustainable, because if they catch a problem, then the cows are better taken care of, the crops are taken better care of, and in the end, we have a more economical farm. Looking down the road, there are things that I would like to see. I don't think we've ever reached the end of being able to reduce our environmental footprint. We can always improve, whether it's with new technology. Those come at a cost, but there's certainly a point in time where you look at precision in farming. One of the things we've looked at very closely is our dairy precision feeding, and we've been able to reduce the amount of nitrogen going out in the manure in the cows just by a precision feeding. And we're just keeping up with the industry standard here. 10 years ago, the industry standard was for a higher protein ration being fed to the cows, and the result was a little bit extra protein going into the manure, which is nitrogen. That protein load cost us money. Protein is expensive right now, but also the experts out there, the nutritional experts, have discovered that the cows will be just as healthy if we reduce the amount of protein going in, and we can get the same amount of milk and the same amount of components. And we've been able to do that and reduce our costs to keep us more sustainable.
Thank you, Dave.
Sure.
Our next presenter is Ken McCarty. Ken is a fourth-generation dairy farmer from Northwest Kansas, where he owns and operates McCarty Family Farms alongside his three brothers. McCarty Family Farms, a previous U.S. Dairy Sustainability Award winner, is made up of 4 dairy farms and an on-site evaporative milk condensing plant that supplies non-GMO, project-verified milk and cream to Danone North America. The McCarty family most recently partnered with Van Tilburg Farms of Salina, Ohio, to build MVP Dairy, which was named the 2020 IDFA Innovative Dairy Farm of the Year. McCarty Family Farms and MVP Dairy are Dairy Care certified, non-GMO project verified, and participate in the farm program. Last year, MVP Dairy and McCarty Family Farms earned their B Corp certification, the most stringent social and environmental certification available. Welcome.
Thanks, happy to be here. So to give you a little bit of background on myself, my family, our farms, and our partnership with Van Tilburg Brothers and MVP Dairy, kind of begins in northeastern Pennsylvania. I'm a fourth generation dairyman. My family was born and raised in northeastern Pennsylvania, where our great grandfather in the early 1900s began our family's dairy. My grandfather took that farm over in the 40s, and upon graduating from Penn State University, my dad had a desire to come back to the farm, ended up teaching school for a little while and working on the dairy still, and ended up buying some ground about a mile up the road from my grandfather. And he and my mom built the dairy that my brothers and I were born and raised on. In the early 90s, my parents began to look for areas for growth and expansion that would enable my brothers and I to come back to the farm if we so desired. And in 1999, we made the decision to move to Northwest Kansas. Very, very different area from where our family had spent the past few hundred years. Wide open plains, very little surface water, not very many trees, and in an area that was accustomed to agriculture at large scale. We started our dairy in Rexford, Kansas in April of 2000, milking about 800 cows, and have been steadily growing since then. Today, the 4 farms in the west, there's 3 in northwest Kansas and 1 in southwest Nebraska, milk approximately 9,000 cows. And most recently, we began a dairy in west central Ohio in partnership with the Van Tilburg Brothers, a fourth generation farming family from west central Ohio. And that dairy began in November of 2018. And excuse me. We milk about 4,000 cows at that farm. And as was mentioned, all of our farms are Validus Dairy Care certified, which means our farms have all undergone the Validus Animal Welfare Audit, the Validus Worker Care Audit, and the Validus Environmental Care Audit. We've also undergone the Validus Traced and Controlled audits, as well as the Validus On-Farm Security audits. We participate in the farm program. We participate in the BQA program. Our farms are non-GMO project verified. And most recently, and an achievement that we're extremely proud of, is we're also B Corp certified. When we think about sustainability and when we think about our role in the dairy industry and our role in trying to advance sustainability, we try to take a very holistic and wide-ranging approach to sustainability. Sustainability in our mind really is centered around obviously the environment, but it also includes the communities in which our farms are located, the health and well-being of our team members, the health and well-being of our cattle, the satisfaction of our customer and the consumer with the products that we create on our farms, and our role within the dairy industry in general. And as such, we not only try to talk the talk, but we try to walk the walk. So open up our farms to tour groups ranging from the Red Hat ladies to the local kindergarten, to ag extension classes, to university groups, and we've tried to take that openness and that community engagement a step further. And at MVP Dairy, we have what we call the Dairy Learning Center, which is basically it's a visitor center built directly onto the front of our farm that tells the story of the McCarty family and of the Van Tilburg family and how we came together to build MVP Dairy, and the steps that we take at MVP Dairy to be better stewards of our environment, be better stewards of our cattle, be better stewards of our team members and of our communities, and also tell the story of the dairy industry in general. Our hope and our mission there was not necessarily to talk solely about us and what we do, but to talk about what good the dairy industry in general does, because the dairy industry does a tremendous amount of good, not only for the communities in which we're involved in, but also obviously the world in general and the consumers that buy and eat our products. So as we think about the future for sustainability, we believe that we need to take steps towards mitigating our carbon footprint with the eventual goal of being carbon neutral or carbon positive. We're trying to be impactful on things like biodiversity and emphasizing on things like pollinator habitat or species in need of conservation, trying to create wildlife habitat that can foster growth in those species, trying to adopt and take on innovative ways to sequester carbon, things like no-till or minimum till, things like cover crops, and specifically at our farm in Ohio, mitigating our impact on surface water or eliminating any potential impact on surface water through things like buffer strips. In the West, we're very focused on things like water conservation through adopting things like the use of soil moisture probes or smart cow cooling technologies or an evaporative milk condensing plant. And we're trying to engage with stakeholders up and down our value chain. So we're engaging in conversations with key partners in our business, key vendors, and asking them to explain to us what they're doing to reduce their environmental impact. And because ultimately we are one linked and interconnected network that if I'm ultimately not able to be sustainable, then everyone down the value chain for me is not sustainable. And the same could be said for all the vendors that supply me. We're trying to create a culture of connectedness and a culture that enables us to all work together towards making the world a more sustainable and healthy place. So what I would say in closing is that really hope that if you happen to be passing by any of our farms, that you stop in and you say hello and tour our farms. And thank you for allowing me to participate today.
And our final award winner that we will get to hear from today is Joey Airoso. Joey and Laure Airoso own and operate Circle A Airoso Dairy in partnership with Joe and Diane Airoso, who are Joey's parents. The dairy's history represents 6 generations and 109 years of dairying by the Airoso family. Today, the dairy milks more than 2,800 cows and farms 1,350 acres. The dairy utilizes a covered lagoon digester, and through this digester, more than 138,000 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent greenhouse gases will be removed from the atmosphere over 10 years, which is the equivalent to removing more than 30,000 passenger cars from the road. Welcome, Joey.
All right, good morning. Our family, my great-grandfather migrated here from the Azores Islands in the early 1900s and started milking cows in Tulare County, California. him and three brothers, and one of them happened to be my grandfather. So there's two generations that came over, and they milked cows till about 1938 out here on the west side of Tulare County, which would have been near the lake bottom, the Tulare Lake. And then in 1938, they kind of split up, and my grandfather was the only brother who stayed in the dairy business, and he started his own farm about 14 miles west of Tulare. And he farmed, we still have that farm today. It's a family farm that we milked cows there until 2017. In 1980, we had bought a ranch about 14 miles south of there. When you're talking about sustainability, it seems to be the new buzzword, but for, I think a lot of people in agriculture who make their livelihoods out on the farm, raise their families, and you have generations of people who are going to continue. Sustainability has always been a key factor in us taking care of the land, looking for opportunities to make our farms more efficient, more environmentally efficient, and more conserving our natural resources and for the next generation. And so in 1980, we purchased a piece of property, about 800 acres, and with the intent of someday being able to expand our farm and be more efficient, take better care of the people that help us take care of our farm, but also take better care of the animals and protect them from the environment. And so currently today, 2006, we actually built that farm, and we're currently milking 3,000 cows, all registered Holsteins. And we've been able to do a lot of things that really show how agriculture really has its eye on sustainability. Using less water, recirculating water. Water is a huge issue here in California. Now we're having a real dry year, and I think it's always going to be, on the top of a lot of our minds here. And so just being conserving water, recirculating water, and even if I look back at all of our practices over the last 40 years, it's kind of interesting that being sustainable really has been kind of a key word in agriculture for a long time. And I'll give you an example of farmers here in the early 50s and 60s started leveling ground and putting in return systems to basically use less water and to recirculate water. And so there's been a lot of good ideas over the years that have really showed that we're kind of ahead of that. It's become, a new buzzword with the consumer. And so I think we really have to tell our story about all the things that we've been doing to be efficient and to protect our livelihoods. Currently, as I said, we milk 3,000 registered Holsteins. Another thing that plays a vital role in sustainability, in my opinion, in the dairy industry is genetics. Our farm and our family has been looking at the genetics since the 1940s, really looking at cows that are more efficient and can consume less feed, produce more milk, and the ideas about taking better care of the cows so that they are more efficient and the footprint that they take up is less, and they are more efficient at the amount that they produce. One of the things here in California that we have the luxury of is we have a lot of byproducts available to our dairy industry. And I think when you start talking about sustainability, you look at all the byproducts that a cow can take in, and it really shows the efficiency of our our industry, that we're able to consume a lot of byproducts that normally were going into landfills many years ago, that a cow is now taking that product and producing food with it. So again, something that our families we really strive to be very efficient. We do, one of our mottos is you have to be conscious about to have a successful farm of sizable, when you're taking care of the amount of animals that we take care of, you have to have good people, and they have to be people that are happy and have good livelihoods, and you have to be able to take care of them. And so we're real conscious about, the people that work on our farm, their families, the towns that they live in. We're all kind of a joint at the hip. The people that support our industries that live in towns, whether it's the people actually working our farms or the people that work at the processing plant. So making sure that our whole community is viable and healthy. I believe that, and I could be a little bit biased about the dairy industry, but I think when you have an industry where a cow produces a product every day, and that product creates thousands and thousands of jobs every day, it is probably one of the most healthy things for the economy, because you have that injection of a product that creates jobs and wealth for people, not just farmers who are producing it. And so very important, I think. And then you take into consideration too all the people around the world who depend on areas of the United States that are able to produce extra food that we can share with other countries. And so I think it's something I'm really proud of. My family's proud of. A little bit more about our family. So today on our farm, we have 4 generations of family members. And my dad, myself, my dad's 3rd generation, I'm 4th generation. My son's 5th generation, and I have some grandkids that are running around here that help out already. So something that really makes it, in my opinion, kind of fun to be out here with your family. And then we also take into consideration too all the people, the employees that we've had that have worked here, some for over 40 years. They're just like our family. We think of them as family, and without them, we can't have the success of our generations of Airoso Dairy. So thank you.
Thank you, Joey. Next, we're going to move on. I have some questions for all of you. So I want to start out and ask Karen, last year, the Innovation Center set new environmental goals for U.S. dairy to reach by 2050. Can you tell us more about why these goals were set and how we're going to reach them?
Sure, Kim. So last year, after 12 plus months of a consultation process through the Dairy Sustainability Alliance, where we got really rich stakeholder input, U.S. Dairy did set voluntary goals, and they are by 2050, U.S. Dairy collectively will become carbon neutral or better, will optimize water use while maximizing recycling, and improve water quality through optimized manure and nutrients by 2050. So I like to point out that these are collective goals. So they do mean at the field, at the farm, and at the processor level. And it also means that not every farm or every company is doing everything, but every farm and company can do something. And so there are strategies put in place to address some of the barriers and challenges and to open up new opportunities for every farm and every entity to find what that contribution is on this industry-wide journey toward the goals. And these goals really support a vision that U.S. Dairy is a key solution to a lot of the environmental challenges that are there today. And as you heard these great award winners described today, each of them are doing fantastic things on their farm that helps to sequester carbon in the soil, that helps to keep water on the land and let it infiltrate down instead of running off the fields, how they're managing their manure to reduce emissions, and how they're monitoring their feed, looking at what they feed their cows and taking optimal care of their cows, so that's another way that they're reducing enteric emissions. So there's really such a rich opportunity for dairy to be a solution to many of the problems today. So these goals put us on that path toward the industry and kind of a transformation of the industry where it's really a solution, and these goals are milestones toward that. And the way we're making that progress is at the field and farm level. There's our strategy that we call the Net Zero Initiative. And that's collaboration of dairy organizations that's really creating this critical pathway for all farms to find what works for them. Many of the practices and technologies that could be used are available today, but there are barriers like cost, risk, new research and data gaps that we need to fill. And so this initiative brings together the science, on-farm pilots, and development of new market or revenue opportunities. So we're really bringing the environmental gains that are possible along with that economic viability on farm that we know is so important and that can really, really provide that engine and momentum at the field and farm level. And then similarly, there's a strategy through the Innovation Center, and there's a processor working group that is focused on at the dairy processing facility level efforts around reducing waste or addressing waste, water, and GHG emissions at those facilities, and also looking at sustainable packaging. So we have two parallel strategies looking at the field and farm level and at the processor level, so we can make progress toward these goals. And like I said, these award winners that you have on the call today or on the podcast today are really demonstrating how we have such great innovation, such dedication, and the industry is working together toward these collective goals.
Is there a baseline action that producers should be doing to enhance sustainability?
Every farmer can look at what are they doing today. So there's 4 areas of focus around the farm that we really can speak to. That is the environmental footprint. So looking at practices they're doing around feed production, looking at cow care and comfort, looking at manure and nutrient management, and energy efficiency. So I'm sure that every farm is doing some great practices in each of those areas today. And then there's opportunity to consult with your local experts, like Dave pointed out. Contact Extension, contact Conservation District, contact the National Farm Program through National Milk Producers Federation, and do an environmental assessment on your farm using the Farm Environmental Stewardship Tool. It'll give you a snapshot of greenhouse gas and energy footprint. So looking around and what's currently in place today, talking to local experts, doing a farm environmental stewardship assessment, that's a great way to understand where your farm is today and begin considering what's the next step that makes sense for your business.
I'd be curious from the farmers on the panel today, how have consumers or other supply chain influences affected your decisions to implement sustainable practices on your dairy? Joey, why don't we start with you?
I would say, I think it's in the back of our minds, but I think we're ahead of them a little bit. We've generally taken the approach that, we've wanted to do things right, for the last 50 years. And so we're not waiting for the consumer to demand that, we put in solar, or we put in a digester, or we take care of our cows properly. We've tried to be leaders in taking care of, whether it's taking care of our animals or taking care of the environment, taking care of our farms. And, a lot of times what drives, the ability for you to make a decision is when, technology comes into play to make something viable, then it makes sense on your farm. And also, I'll use the example of solar, for instance. Prior to regulations, getting past that the utility companies had to allow you to generate your own power. It wasn't even possible. And so sometimes, even though we don't like regulations, too many of them, of course, some of them are necessary to make something work. And, if you, solar is, we have a solar facility that operates our dairy for the last 4 years and actually going on 5. But, what really made that possible is technology and some regulations that forced utility companies to allow us to be able to aggregate all the meters on our property. And I would say that, as I said earlier, if I go back and look at, sustainability can mean a lot of different things, but there has to be balance in that word, and it has to have some economic sustainability in there too, because if you don't include that, you can't take care of your people that work for you, and your farm can't be successful and enter into the next generation. And so there's a balance there. And for instance, when we looked at our digester project, we were the first farm to really, along with 15 of our neighbors here, but we were kind of right at the forefront of really entrusting ourselves into a really, really new idea. And I think, one of the reasons is that the regulations were put in place in California and the technology came about so that you could actually make this work for everybody. So I think that is super important.
Ken?
I think without a doubt, the consumer has definitely influenced the way that we operate our farms. And at times, I don't think that it's necessarily an influence that's placed upon us directly. We try very hard to work with our customer and work with industry groups to get a feeling on what might be emerging trends, because consumers move at the pace of market cycles, and we as dairymen move at the pace of Mother Nature. So we're inherently slower at times to be able to achieve what the consumer necessarily wants us to. So I think it's absolutely vital that we're constantly paying attention to emerging trends. And what we've really tried to do is create a system on all of our farms that ultimately is accountable to causes or to groups beyond just ourselves. We don't believe that it's okay for us to just say, hey, trust me, I'm doing a good job. Everybody says they're doing a good job. What we're trying to do is to build a system around us that validates that, hey, we are trying our best every single day to do the right thing. That's why we engage with Validus. That's why we engage with Farm Program. That's why we engage with the B Corp or with B Lab. We're trying to create a system that can build trust in all aspects of our business with our customer and with the consumer. When it comes to things like environmental sustainability, we work with a group called Eco Practices that quantifies with scientific empirical numbers what our in-field on-farm practices are doing to mitigate our environmental impact. So we're quantifying on an annual basis carbon tons sequestered or carbon tons mitigated, improvements in soil health, improvements in water conservation. So as opposed to just saying we're doing a good job, we're bringing in neutral third parties to actually evaluate what we're doing, putting hard and fast numbers to those metrics, and then releasing those and disclosing those to the public and to our customer. So, I think there's going to continue to be a request from the consuming public to be more transparent, to be more accountable to higher causes like animal welfare, causes like environmental sustainability, causes like community engagement. So we're constantly trying to evolve our approaches there. But hey, our crystal ball isn't always clear either. So sometimes we miss the mark and we have to course correct. But that's part of what keeps it fun,
And lastly, Dave, how have consumer other supply chain influences affected your decisions to implement sustainable practices on your dairy?
Well, I am in all of what Ken and Joey can do with their dairy cows, and being a little guy, I look at it a little bit differently, but in a lot of the same ways, because economics is a huge part of what you do. And I ship milk to Maryland, Virginia Co-op. They ask for quality milk, and everything that I can do to provide a cleaner, a fresher water supply for my cows makes better milk. I can meet the demands of keeping that bacteria count in the milk correct, because then I can keep equipment cleaner. And the economics of that is I get paid extra for that milk. So that's one thing. Even before we built the manure storage, so we did not have to continue to daily haul. This farm had daily hauled the cow manure for the 40 years that my uncle farmed it, going back to 1960. And there certainly was daily haul before that. So in 2015, whenever we built the manure storage and could start hauling that manure at the correct time for what the crop need is, we reduced the amount of runoff from this farm. And that's big. Prior to actually doing that manure storage, though, I applied and worked through the Nutrient Management Act, Act 38, which is what it's called here in Pennsylvania, for managing the nutrients coming from the cows, going onto the crops, managing all the nutrients you put on the cropland. And that shows that was voluntary on my part. If I was a large farm like Joey or Ken, I would have had to have done that, because we're CAFOs. Those are CAFOs. Those are concentrated animal units. But a small guy like myself can actually benefit from voluntarily doing the nutrient management plan, because it connects me with a lot of the experts. It connects me with a lot of those things that I wouldn't necessarily cross my path, because I didn't have to deal with the regs as Ken and Joey have to deal with them. And thirdly, I'll just say this, as whenever we're sitting in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and there's a total daily maximum load, a TMDL, that Pennsylvania is supposed to meet. Well, that's nitrogen, that's phosphorus, that's sediment, and that's pounds of those. But I really get a big, I enjoy being able to see water running off of my farm that is cleaner today than it was years ago. Let's say we have that gully washer thunder shower, and I can sit on the road and look at the runoff coming from my farm, and it's a little clearer than the guy beside me that is using practices, not all the practices that I'm using. Maybe he's doing a little tillage that he has to do. Maybe he doesn't have the buffer strips, and my water is running with less sediment in it than that farmer beside me. So those are the things that you can have pride in, that yes, you have accomplished something, because now you have produced water that's going to run off of your farm anyway. You've produced that water in a cleaner sense. And it's economic too, because whenever the soil stays with me, that means I retain that soil, I retain the nutrients, and it's good for everybody, but it's also good for me.
So what's next on the horizon for your dairy with regard to sustainability?
Oh, I don't know. I would to be able to do a little bit more in precision farming with equipment. There's a huge leap because of the capital expenditure, but I will continue to look at ways to improve. Just for example, I use a weather service that I know pays for itself, even though it costs us a lot of money. And I will probably double down on that. I have not put the weather station. I've not paid for the weather station on the farm, but it would also it would be a nice improvement because it would help my community too. I use DTN weather, and if I had a weather station on the farm, then my neighbors would be able to see in real time what was happening at that weather station. And that may happen in the future, but I can tell you that it won't happen until the dairy economy is a little bit more stable. We've been through a couple of years of instability, up and down prices, and we're thankful to be here. But yes, it takes the economics to be able to do that.
Ken, what's next on the horizon for your dairy with regard to sustainability?
So, there's a lot of things on our mind and on our plate at this point. And Dave touched on one of them, adopting more precision farming practices, things like variable rate seeding, variable rate herbicide applications, variable rate irrigation, and trying to find ways in which we can hopefully reduce and, in a perfect world, eliminate the use of herbicides and ideally pesticides. We're experimenting this year with narrow row corn planting, looking at different cover crop species, different cover crop blends to try to be positively impactful on those sort of things. But we're also looking at on dairy practices, things like biodigesters, nutrient recovery systems, renewable energy systems, things that Joey's already doing out there. We're a little bit behind that in terms of some of the state regulations and incentives that would encourage that. But also investing a lot of time and effort and energy focusing on enhancing our cow herd. We work really closely with the Holstein Association and our genomics provider Neogen to help us select the right cows to be our genetic foundation. We're looking at ways that we can bring in embryo transfer work and things like that can help speed up the rate of our genetic progress and build that more sustainable and more ideal cow for what our goals are. And really trying to take a lot of the information that we have today and using it to advance and speed up the pace of progress on our farms. We collect reams and reams of data. We just, at this point, aren't leveraging that data to increase the pace of progress like we should be. So we're trying to engage with some people that are far smarter than we are today to help us with some data analytics platforms that can really help us be more predictive in how we work on our farms, how we work with our cows, but also make smarter investments and smarter decisions. Because right now at times we make decisions based on gut feel, and that's great, and it's always going to have a place. But it tends to, we're wrong with that gut at times also. So we need to utilize the data that we're already collecting on our farms to help us make better and smarter decisions. So there's a lot that we're working on, and it's just a matter of how big's your appetite, and at times how big's your checkbook too. So, but we're getting there eventually.
And Joey, what's next on the horizon for your dairy with regard to sustainability?
There's an old saying, if you're scared of change, you definitely don't want to be in the dairy industry, because I think the dairy industry requires you to pretty much have your eyes wide open at all time and be looking for new ideas, new ways. And I was glad to hear Ken talk about, genomics and cows, because I think there's the two most important things on any dairy farm to be successful are, first, you have to have good people and you have to be able to take care of them. And the second is you got to have good cows. And I think, interestingly enough, if everybody remembers 2008, 2009, it was kind of an unfortunate experiment that happened, and we've seen it in our area for sure, is that prior to 2008 and 2009, there was really two ways to dairy. There was you try to do everything right, and there was the other way of trying to do everything inexpensive and don't spend a dime on anything. And what occurred after 2009 was that you had to pretty much do everything right from there on after. And The other thing that really became apparent was you better have good cows and good people, because if you don't, you just can't survive in this industry. So I really think our focus has always been on trying to retain good employees that really love our cows as much as we do, but also just continually looking at the cows and trying to figure out how we can make them better, more efficient, live longer, and create a smaller footprint, you know. And our industry as a whole, in my opinion, is probably one of the leaders in the world when it comes to the efficiencies and what we've done over the last 60 years. You know, I think it's something that we should really all be proud of. We don't get enough credit for that. And, you know, it's kind of hard to take credit for it. I mean, we're the only ones that are going to toot our horn. I mean, we have people trying to rip our horn out of our car every day. So, you know, we have to continue to get our message out. But some of the things that we're looking at, I mean, look at water here in California. That is an issue that's never probably going to get better. So we have to continually look at, you know, new ways to irrigate our crops and be more efficient, and to recirculate water, and to take care of whatever we're going to be allotted. One of the things that we've done in our basin this year, and this is something we started on in 2013, which is prior to the last drought. So I give credit to all of the farmers that are farming in the Tulare Basin here in California. We had a lot of foresight to try to figure out our long-term plan. And our main goal was that, we don't want to run out of water. So we actually, this year is the first year where we're actually measuring every crop we grow on ET. So we know that it takes X amount of heat units and ET to irrigate or grow alfalfa crop or grow corn crop. And the way it's going to work is you're going to have, it's going to be a water account, and every acre is going to be farmable acres will be in that account, and you're going to be allotted so much ET. And so you have to make that ET work on your farm. And so it's going to mean, like, when we enter a year like this year where we have, you know, a major drought going on, that there's going to be acres of ground that just can't be farmed. And you're starting to see some fallow acres, unfortunately, in our area out here because it's just been so dry. We normally get two sources of water. We have a surface source, and then we have groundwater. And the groundwater is what we're measuring. You can only take out what you put back. This is the second driest year in the last 117. So if that gives you an idea of what California is dealing with this year. And so we're going to have in the Tulare Basin and the Kauai Basin, which is, you know, the #1 ag county, or one of the #1 agricultural counties in the United States, they're going to have 0 surface water deliveries this year. So that's only happened one time in the last 117 before. So the other thing that we're doing, we've formed a land trust here in our basin. We have a wildlife refuge that exists in about 5 miles southwest of our farm. And so we're looking at adding on to that wildlife refuge and taking some ground that's neighboring it out of production and putting it back into a conservation mode, you know, just because we know that going forward, water is going to be scarce, and we're not going to be able to farm all of this ground, at least not every year. And so those are some of the things we're dealing with. I do think that, I mean, sometimes it looks really bleak, you know, when you look out, but then on the flip side, there is technology out there that's going to come into play that's going to be very beneficial to all of us. And so, you know, you kind of gotta look at that balance. And some of the other things that we're looking at, I mean, I think it's kind of exciting to see the robotics starting to work into our industry, and robotics and the technology of measuring, you know, the cow movement with some of these SCR systems and things like that. That'll probably be maybe one of our next moves, is kind of changing the way we dairy a little bit, try to use a little more technology when we're looking at, you know, cows every day and that kind of thing. We've been fortunate. We've been blessed with some really good people here. I got 2 great herdsmen who love what they do. And so, you know, we haven't felt pressed to really make that move. But I do think that's kind of exciting on the horizon, that there's that technology out there that will be able to assist us in taking care of our cows better. And yeah, so I guess, you know, it's a little bit, I'm going to say a little scary sometimes, but then on the flip side, it's somewhat exciting to see that there is going to be some new ideas out there that will help us move forward.
Well, congratulations to all of you. And my thanks to you today for joining us and sharing your farm stories and for being leaders in innovation and sustainability. You all represent dairy well. Don't forget to subscribe to the Bovinews channel on YouTube, find our Bovinews podcasts on your favorite listening platform, or find out more information at bovinews.com. Thanks for tuning in with us today. We'll see you next time on another edition of Bovinews.